I was in high school and I was in year 8. This year was one of the toughest years at high school for me, due to the fact that I had been picked on by a lot of the popular boys, but there was a certain one that was obsessed with bullying me. His name was Daniel. For the first 2 years of high school, the classes and the classrooms were pretty much the same, for the main classes anyway. We had the same teachers and the same students in those classes, due to being put in a year group called 7C, which meant I had to put up with Daniel in pretty much all of my classes. He was a class clown, but he was also a bully. He never used to bully anyone else though, just me. It was like he was obsessed with going out of his way to play a joke on me, come up and punch me in the arm, or trip me over. He used to call me faggot all the time, and kept asking me if I was gay or not, and calling me rumblebum. But Daniel wasn't the only one in on the fun. Paul was the year's biggest clown. He enjoyed picking on me, but he wasn't playing rough like Daniel was. Paul didn't always pick on me either. He had others to pick on as well. Paul just loved the attention. I felt like I wasn't Paul's top priority, so I felt like he didn't have a personal thing against me, like Daniel did. This all happened for well over a year, and I was really starting to get over it. Each year at school would have a year advisor. I would often go and see our year advisor in regards to my situation. Daniel had been spoken to many of times, but nothing ever used to sink in. It's like he didn't care. As long as he got to bully me at least once every day, he got his kicks. If it wasn't before class or just in the classrooms in general, it was during PE practical, especially in the change rooms. All of the boys used to pick on me, saying I was gay and all of this other rude stuff. They would then try to tease me by dancing around shirtless or even in their underwear, trying to intimidate me or trying to turn me on. I kind of wish I had my own change room so I wasn't bothered by anyone. So because of all this happening pretty much on a daily basis, I never wanted to go to school. I wasn't attending school some days, and I would just walk around town, or I would walk back out towards home. Then I'd hang out down by the river until it was time to go home. My sister would ask me why I wasn't on the bus with them. I would just say I caught another bus home. I don't think she ever bought it though. Then one morning, I got up earlier than everyone else. I skipped breakfast, I went out the back door, got on my bike and rode up the road, but this time I kept going. I didn't want to be at home when everyone was getting ready for school. I didn't want to be forced into going to school. I kept riding right out to the highway. I turned out onto the highway and I still kept riding. When I got to the river, I followed a dirt road down to the end of it and sat there for maybe half an hour. I rode back out to the highway and I crossed the bridge going over the river. I kept riding until I got up to the forestry. I didn't want to be found, not just yet anyway. I knew by this time my dad would be out looking for me, and I knew I would be in a lot of trouble, but I didn't care. Anything was better than seeing that clown at school and putting up with his antics. I rode around the forestry for what seemed to be hours. I wanted to go home now, but I didn't at the same time. I sat at the side of the creek for a little while, weighing up the pros and cons of going home. I had to go back at some point. I wasn't going to school, and I know my dad would make me go. I decided to head back towards home. I got back to the highway, then soon after I got to the bridge going over the river, and then I took the main road going into town. I knew that in the next half an hour I was going to be met with my parents and who knows who. I was anxious. I didn't know if they were going to be mad at me or be glad to see me. I got back to the bridge that crosses the creek next to the intersection to my street. I decided to go and sit under the bridge for another 10 minutes, preparing myself for what I was going to face. All of a sudden, I heard a voice call out my name. The voice was my uncle. He found me and told me my mum and dad are worried sick. Seconds later, my dad arrives in his car. He was full of mixed emotions and told me to ride home and he'll talk to me there, and I got back home. Both my parents were beside themselves. I explained why I rode off. I explained why I didn't want to go to school, because of Daniel bullying me every day. My dad wanted to get in touch with Daniel's parents, but that wasn't advised. By now, I had caused a lot of drama for my parents due to my anxiety of knowing what was to come for me at school every day. My mum and dad didn't know what to do from here, so they called the principal from my primary school, which they got some guidance and some advice. After that, they called the high school. The deputy principal wanted to have a meeting with me and my parents at the school, but on the next day, I ended up staying at home that day, considering I had already missed half the day anyway. I was glad of that, and that was really my plan. The next day, I was so nervous, but I knew it had to be done. My parents and I had the meeting. The deputy principal was lovely, but I was in a bit of trouble. I was put on an attendance sheet, which meant I had to have the sheet signed by every teacher at every class, and after this meeting, I had to continue my day at school, and my parents had left. Apparently Daniel was spoken to as well, which actually made things worse in a way. It was no longer him trying to be funny, he actually really hated me now. For that whole day, Daniel never said a word to me, he just gave me death stares, all throughout the day. I ended up seeing the school counsellor for the last 2 periods of school, every Friday afternoon. I always looked forward to that part of the week. I would have lunch with my friends, and I knew for the rest of the day I didn't have any more classes. I liked the school counsellor. She was really nice. She always made me feel better. I always felt good knowing I didn't have to see Daniel for the rest of the day. The next week came, and it was a Tuesday. I was heading to my next class, and I was walking in a line of students getting to their classes, where all of a sudden, something hit me in the back of the head. It was a bloody rock. Luckily it didn't hit me hard. I turned around and it was Daniel and Paul. "Did you just throw a rock at me?" "What if I did? You're just a faggot anyway." I started to get really angry and I retaliated. "Just shut up, man. I'm sick of this. Every single day. Just grow up." Daniel's mouth dropped. I had just stood up to my personal bully, but how was he going to react to that? Next thing, he pinned me up against the brick wall and said, "You'll regret even saying that to me, and if you go dob on me again, you're going down." Then Paul pipes up and says, "Hey, free period at the Oval. We'll see you there, Rumblebum." "Yeah, Rumblebum, we'll see you there. 3 p.m. sharp. Don't be late." So they were challenging me to a fight. Well, as they probably knew, I wasn't a physical type of person, which meant either nothing would happen or I would get belted up. Now, because they said not to dob, I went and found my sister and I told her what was planned. Her male friends came over and wanted to know what was going on. My sister told me to go see my year advisor, but I knew she wouldn't do anything about it. My sister's friends told me to meet them at free period and we would all go down to the Oval as a group. My sister didn't really want to get involved with it, but her friends did. My sister's friends actually liked me. 3 p.m. came and I was so nervous, but I knew if I was with my sister and her friends, I would be safe. I met up with them at the quadrangle and we started walking down towards the Oval. When we got there though, Daniel wasn't to be seen. Paul was there though, but he was with a PE teacher doing some football training. We all walked up and Paul stopped what he was doing and seen me. He then laughed. "Did you really think Daniel was being serious earlier? You know he's a pussy, right?" I stood there not knowing what to say or what to think. "I commend you for coming down though. You're braver than I thought." It's okay, man. I'm totally fine with you now. I have total respect for you. I won't pick on you anymore. I thanked Paul for his kind words, and then we all walked over to the bus shelter and waited for the bus to go home. The next day, we had our first class, and we were all waiting outside for the teacher to arrive. I was standing there talking to a girl named Susie. She was a very popular girl, and she was always nice to me. If I knew I wasn't gay, she would have been a top catch, but then she probably would have been out of my league anyway. Next thing, Daniel rocks up and comes up behind me and pushes me. "Hey Dan, would you just lay off him? What's he ever done to you?" Susie stood up for me. I didn't know what to think, but I felt grateful. Daniel just stood there and didn't say a word. Then Paul comes up and pats Daniel on the back and says, "Where were you yesterday, bro? Young mate here came to meet you." Daniel turns and looks at me and laughs. "Oh, really? Well, if you really want to fight me, let's do it now." "Nah, I don't want to fight you, man, because that will just get you into more trouble, won't it?" Daniel went to pin me up against the wall, but just before he could do anything else, the teacher turned up and had seen the whole thing. Daniel got sent to the office, where he was dealt with. I didn't have much more trouble with Daniel anymore after that, and into year 9, he was only there for the first semester, and then he had left. I was glad to see that he wasn't at our school anymore. I'm not sure whether he moved away or even got expelled. I didn't care really. I was just so glad to see the last of him. My life could only get better from here.